Gorbachev is dead. Gorbachev is dead. Now, a lot of liberals are like, Gorbachev, oh, he was so great. Oh my God, Gorbachev, he really cared about the Soviet people. Oh, he was such a good man. See, whenever a liberal says that, you know that the person sucks. You know the person sucks. What liberals really love about Gorbachev is that he killed off the Soviet Union. He failed. So he's the liberals' favorite type of politician. He failed. He meant well. He was a loser. He was a failure. That's why they adore Gorbachev. That's why they love Obama. They celebrate every Weimar Republic loser. I mean, this is why liberals love him. This is why liberals love him. All right? Because he was in a television commercial.
Это Горбачев.
Горбачев?
Это из-за него у нас в экономике бардак.
Да благодаря ему у нас новые возможности.
Это из-за него у нас политическая нестабильность.
Да благодаря ему у нас свобода.
Полный хаос.
Перспективы.
Политическая нестабильность.
Да благодаря ему у нас есть писахат.
За Горбачева!
За Горбачева!
За Горбачева! За Горбачева!
Sometimes nothing
The
brings
only people who say hail to Gorbachev have to be paid actors.
people together like a nice hot pizza from Pizza Hut.
If you want to really know what happened in Russia, see, liberals love them because for a short period of time there, you could buy Pizza Hut in Moscow. Now you can't because, you know, fascists took over. Oh, well. Oh, well. I guess the fascists took over and are doing aggressive wars. Oh, well. Oh, damn. Did we lose? Did we lose? The leftist political superpower is defeated. Oh well, I guess the fascists are in power. Who could have saw that coming? Oh no. Oh shoot. Oh darn. Oh well, I mean, I guess that's how it goes, huh? I guess that's how it goes. Hey, you want to know the legacy of Gorbachev? His legacy. Russia's GDP dropped by 40%. Real wages halved. Poverty ballooned from 2.2 million in 1987-88 to 66 million in 93-95. Millions died under the brutal regime of privatization and shock therapy. 500,000 women were trafficked into sexual slavery. Hear any of that from your liberal people going, Gorbachev. Gorbachev, Mike, he's great. Here's what Xi Jinping said. Why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? Why did the Communist Party of the Soviet Union fall to pieces? An important reason is that in the ideological domain, competition is fierce. To completely repudiate the historical experience of the Soviet Union, to repudiate the history of the CPSU, to repudiate Lenin, to repudiate Stalin, was to wreak chaos in Soviet ideology and engage in historical nihilism. It caused party organizations at all levels to have barely any function whatsoever. It robbed the party of its leadership of the military. In the end, the CPSU, as great a party as it was, scattered like a flock of frightened beasts. The Soviet Union, as great a country as it was, shattered into a dozen pieces. This is a lesson from the past. Yeah. And I think one of the issues is, it's not that the Soviet Union didn't need reform. It's not that the Soviet Union didn't have problems. Of course it did. But if you go to Gorbachev and say, yay, he got rid of the Soviet Union, you are living in some, is it 1997? When there was still a possibility that it would improve the lives of Russians? No, the evidence is in. It made the world a worse place by far. Russia is far worse of a geopolitical entity than the Soviet Union. And it's really, quite frankly, not that disputable. This is Gorbachev's legacy.
То есть ты нюхаешь с 8 лет?
Да, 11.
11.
То есть ты нюхаешь с 8 лет?
Да.
А среди девчонок проститутки есть?
Да, там их много.
С каких лет?
С 13 до 16. В 16 они уже 13-14 они сосут.
Как ты зарабатываешь?
Половым способом.
И сколько лет ты этим? Таким образом? С 9? А много девчонок зарабатывает таким же образом?
Все.
Ты зарабатываешь проституцией?
Нет, почему?
А как это называется?
Ну так-то да.
Как-то да. То есть ты занимаешься разнообразными делами с мужиками?
Нет, не разнообразными.
То есть ты занимаешься тем, что ты...
Ну, я... Миньет. Да.
Зарабатывают таким образом только девчонки или мальчишки тоже?
Мальчишки тоже. Гена есть. Он попу дает.
Много таких мальчишек здесь?
Нормально.
That is the reality of what Russia was like after the fall of the Soviet Union. And it's not just in the testimony of children who were trafficked into sexual slavery. It was a life expectancy drop that has rarely been seen in human history. The transition to, quote, market economies in many post-communist societies of the former Soviet Union and the other former Eastern Bloc countries in Europe has produced a demographic collapse. Among the most serious findings is a 4-year drop in life expectancy among Russian men since 1980. Development programs report also noted significant drops in life expectancy in Armenia, Belarus, Bulgaria, Latvia, Lithuania, and Romania. The immediate cause of the rising mortality is the rise in self-destructive behavior, especially among men. Old problems such as alcoholism have increased. Drug misuse, a relatively new problem in the former communist blocs, has risen dramatically in the recent years. A report, Transition 1999, stated that suicide rates have climbed by 60% in Russia, 80% in Lithuania, and 95% in Latvia since 1989. Behind these self-destructive behavior, the authors say, are economic factors including rising poverty, unemployment, financial insecurity, and corruption. Whereas only 4% of the population of the region had incomes equivalent to $4 a day or less in 1988, that figure had climbed to 32% by 1994. The transition to a market economy has been accompanied by lower living standards, including poorer diets, a deterioration in social services, and major cutbacks in health spending. What we are arguing, says Omar Noman, an economist for the Development Fund and one of the report's contributors, is that the transition to market economies in the region is the biggest killer we have seen in the 20th century if you take out famines and wars. The sudden shock and what it did to the system has effectively meant that 5 million Russian men's lives have been lost in the 1990s. Using Britain and Japan with a ratio of 96 men to every 100 women as the base population, the report's authors have calculated that there is now some 9.6 million missing men in the former communist bloc. Typical patterns of a man loses his job and develops a drinking problem. The women then leave and the men die, first emotionally and then physically. Overall, the Russian death rate from accidents, most of them involving alcohol, has risen 83% since 1991. But hey, Pizza Hut, Pizza Hut, Pizza Hut. Russia's economy never recovered. It's still not really recovered. They produce a lot of oil. They're a raw resource producer to export to other countries in unequal exchange. They never really recovered. $1,000 views on this video. Wow. He did more harm than good by precipitating the breakup of the Soviet Union. Who knew? It seemed to us back then that he was a person who could change the Soviet Union for the better. Then, when his time was coming to the end, it turned out that he is a person who broke up the Soviet Union, broke up a vast country, which led to a large number of wars and civil unrest in the former Soviet republics between the people of the Soviet Union. The capitalists make money, though. That's why I don't have a high opinion of him now, of his life journey or his achievements.
Ну, то, что Союз развалился, я
The
считаю,
fact that the Soviet Union got dismantled is wrong, I think.
СССР не
Soviet Union
разваливать,
should
его
not be
надо было,
dismantled.
ну, если сравнивать с самолетом или с
modernized, comparing it
автомобилем
to a plane or a car.
модернизировать, убрать наносное лишнее к тому периоду, что мешало.
Remove
Моё
excess that was
мнение
hindering its
такое, да.
development.
Ну,
That's my
попал он
opinion.
в историю как человек, пытавшийся
Went down in
изменить
history as a man who tried to change the
страну,
country, even the world somehow.
даже мир, может быть, в чем-то.
Отрицательно отношусь.
I have a negative view of Mikhail Gorbachev's time in power.
Он сделал много.
He did a lot of
Вредного для
damaging
нашей
things to our
страны.
country. We are the ones facing the consequences. I guess they stopped interviewing people because they couldn't find a single person who supported him. Hasan on Gorbachev's death?
Listen, chatters who keep saying Gorbachev is dead. Unless Gorbachev died from having a fucking insane erection after trying to fuck Addison Rae's mom, okay? I do not care about it at this moment. We will get to it later, okay? Did he die because he wanted to fuck Addison Rae's mom and then all of a sudden the boner killed him? No? Then I don't care.
To a boxing match.
And I kind of honestly, that's the Chad approach. Me mauling over it and spitting on him and saying how much he sucked.
Hello again. This time
But
we'll
this is
discuss
even
that
more on point.
stupid Pizza Hut commercial Gorbachev made. This is more of a shitpost, honestly, but I've been meaning to get to this, so here I am. This will probably be a lot more vulgar than what you normally expect of me, but I have a, let's say, severe distaste of Gorbachev, and that comes across quite easily. If you're wondering what my personal opinions of Gorbachev are, look at the beginning monologue on hate in the short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. If you're out of the loop somehow on who this vile human being is, Gorbachev was the last leader of the Soviet Union, the one personally responsible for the fuck-up after fuck-up during the policies post-1985, and the one who illegally dissolved the USSR against the democratic will of the Soviet people, plunging tens, if not hundreds of millions into severe, abject, humiliating poverty that the vast majority have yet to recover from 30 years later. Somehow, as some sick joke, he's still alive. We have a saying in Arabic, which goes kind of like...
Not anymore!
Like, the devil doesn't destroy his own nest, and Gorbachev is the reinforced steel skeleton of that nest, if anything. Let's take a look at this soulless husk of a man selling out his...
There was a referendum on dissolving the Soviet Union, Rex Parka, and the overwhelming majority of people voted to keep it.
Great country for what Americans tell me is pretty shit pizza, apparently. Shall we?
In Soviet society, most people didn't need cars. They designed their cities around public transit. On these, they kind of had these modular designs where it was like everything that you would get in an apartment, and you would live near to where you worked. You would have, your kindergarten, your school, healthcare, stuff was accessible locally and walkable. And then there was quality public transit take you to other services that you might need more infrequently. They didn't build the cities. They didn't need cars. So they didn't invest into car manufacturing. And they had car manufacturing. Cars always have some purpose in society since their invention. But the Soviet Union was designed not around the car. And I think a lot of people, now that you're looking in hindsight on the public, city planning decisions of the United States following World War II and the suburbanization and the car dependency, we made the wrong decision.
This smug piece of shit. What the fuck are you so happy about? The incoming AIDS epidemic?
God.
You see this kid? Apparently, that's his granddaughter, who spends her time as a socialite attending lavish parties, appearing in clothing and makeup commercials, and traveling to and from Europe for, I shit you not, more variety in fashion. That's a direct quote. End me.
Это Горбачев.
Горбачев.
Это из-за него у нас в экономике бардак.
You'll quickly see this old dude knows what's up. Economic confusion is beyond an understatement. At the time this commercial was being aired, every single public enterprise the Soviet people fought and bled for was being wholeheartedly sold off to private hands for literal pennies. Ridiculous rates, like 2% the actual worth of whatever enterprise, for example. inflation.
That's how people got wealthy in Russia. That's where the oligarchs come from. You had the Soviet Union steelworks, and you handed it to some corrupt conservative for 2 cents on the dollar, and then he immediately made back his money in 1 month. That was the privatization.
Lack of practically all sorts of goods, a complete collapse of Russia's industrial base, and 100 other issues at the very time this was aired. The vast majority of former Soviet states have yet to reach pre-Soviet levels of development 30 years after the dissolution. Alright, fucking Zoomer over here has no clue what he's talking about. Opportunity for what? Eating rotten apples? Dying from fully preventable diseases because Soviet healthcare was privatized or completely dismantled? Mass unemployment? What possible opportunity could have come from the greatest geopolitical disaster in modern history? Spot on again, old guy. Yet again, though, a horrific understatement. There wasn't just political instability, there was total political collapse. Things were so bad for the new free and democratic establishment that the CIA had to rig Russian and practically all other post-Soviet countries' elections to prevent the Communist Party from coming back to power. This is aside from the messed up stuff Russian police started doing, along with mafia and oligarch thugs murdering people without even so much as a slap on the wrist. You know the dystopia that the Soviet Union was painted as in American textbooks and popular media, etc.? It actually did exist, but it was capitalist Russia in the 90s. Oh my lord, is this dude reading from the American propaganda NPC line handbook? The fuck is freedom? What is freedom when people are starving and unemployed, illiterate, sick, and with no future prospects? I'll tell you what freedom this dipshit's talking about. The ability for a handful of several hundred people to consolidate all the wealth the Soviet people built into their own hands. Look up Russian oligarchs if you doubt me. Almost every single wealthy person in Russia now, without fault, did it through the theft of Soviet state assets, favors, and money embezzlement. My boy here knows what's up. Complete and utter chaos. You can shove that pizza up your ass, Gorby, at least then the grease will make it easier for the West to fuck you. Hope for what? It was the exact opposite. There was zero hope, and it was clear to literally everybody that lived then, for God's sake. Uncritical support for Chairman Old Dude, though. The guy's based.
Политическая нестабильность.
Да благодаря ему у нас есть писахат.
La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Lady, you're old enough to have witnessed the Nazis destroy your country. What the fuck is Pizza Hut gonna do? You're gonna give up shashlik and sirniki for some crap overcooked American bastardization of pizza? You're right. Because of Gorbachev, we have women with master's degrees selling themselves on the street in order to feed their children. But at least we have fucking stuffed crust pizza with extra cheese. You can almost taste the tears of the orphans.
За Горбачева!
За Горбачева!
За Горбачева!
Sometimes nothing brings people together like a nice hot pizza from Pizza Hut.
And there it is, the fairy tale ending. If this actually happened, he would have been rightfully lynched, but no, we just get some babushka peasant pitifully looking up at the sky, waiting for death to mercifully take her. It's a shitty propaganda piece that's used to sell pizza, ironically though, not to Russians.
Exactly.
Yes, the people who made this trash...
Exactly, you would never make this ad in Russia, because no one would buy that shit pizza, they would hate it so much.
Knew just how horrifically unpopular it would be in Russia, so it wasn't aired there. In fact, Russian polls consistently show that Gorbachev is absolutely despised, and
a 2017 poll found that only 1% of Russians expressed admiration for Gorbachev. I wonder who those 1%ers were. 30% professed to dislike him, and 13% said their overall attitude was one of disgust or hatred. Yeltsin, who died in 2007, received almost identical ratings. Oh, wait a minute. The people that the West loves are utterly despised in Russia? That's weird. I wonder why. See, that's the thing. Russians aren't considered to be human beings by Americans. So what they believe, what they suffer doesn't count. Fucking disgusting, dude. Honestly.
And rightfully so. A little less than a year after this ad was filmed, in August of 1998, the Russian financial system collapsed, like completely bottomed out. This fictional family, and the douche talking about my freedoms, would have been exactly the demographic that were devastated, with unemployment skyrocketing yet again, with what few semblances of public programs completely gone, and triumphant misery for all. In merciful justice, however, the Pizza Hut location was shut down during that very same economic meltdown. Our boy Gorby, who was paid up to $1 million for this ad, possibly more even, lost all his own savings in that crash too. Thinking he'd still be the West's sweetheart after destroying his nation, he was sorely disappointed to find that they just brushed him aside, and even the Russian government at the time, although still treating him relatively well compared to the average Russian, practically didn't even acknowledge his existence. After he fell from grace, he went into semi-retirement in a shitty little apartment which flooded frequently from unserviced pipes and a crumbling ceiling that leaked from rain and snow. All the Russian government did for him was give him a maid to help him out. His entire family had moved to Germany. All these issues. If only there was a country with a system that provided all with their basic necessities. A country that would have guaranteed he wouldn't live in such miserable conditions. Oh wait, this waste of breath worked tirelessly to destroy that. And I say fuck him. He deserved worse. He deserves worse. The fact that he's still alive is a travesty. Not only was one of his last geopolitical decisions to greenlight the US invasion of my country, Iraq, but his actions left countless people's liberation movements and socialist governments in the cold, with no diplomatic, economic, or military support. His actions didn't just doom the Soviet people, but countless millions around the globe. Hold on though, you think this is it? He also did ads for the Austrian Federal Railway Service for some strange reason, as well as an ad for, yes, Louis Vuitton. Fuck you, Gorbachev. Fuck you. I look forward to your grave becoming a gender-neutral bathroom, you son of 16 generations of bastards. As we say in Iraq, Tobbak 16 elif marad. And that's all for this time. Sorry, it was a little more of a meme, but I was feeling a little silly, so why not? I apologize for the excess cursing, but this angered me, as you may expect. If you like what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Ad Democracy Expert, Alan Plum, Andy Haywood, Brennan Ruffing, Daniel Williams.
You should honestly go and enjoy this Hakim video on it, you know. All right, let's spend our time reading. I should have put this up on the title because I'm mauling. I hate this motherfucker. I think if you're a leftist and you don't think Gorbachev is a disaster, you're wrong. I don't know what to say. Also, I've seen this from smart people that I usually like. They'll say something like, well, Gorbachev was a failure, but maybe there was nothing he could have done. You guys are aware that China still exists, right? China suffered the same kind of geopolitical shocks that the Soviet Union faced in a far worse position, and they have grown from there. They did reforms that supposedly what Gorbachev was trying to do, while raising the standard of living of their people and not having an epic fucking collapse. So the idea that you couldn't have made changes to the Soviet Union is absolutely false. I just linked the video like 5 times in the chat. Scroll up. Mikhail Gorbachev, reformist Soviet leader, is dead at 91. Adopting principles of glasnost and perestroika, he weighed the legacy of 7 decades of communist rule and set a new course, presiding over the end of the Cold War and the dissolution of the USSR. Fucking disgusting, dude. Mikhail Gorbachev, whose rise to power of the Soviet Union set into motion a series of revolutionary changes that transformed the map of Europe and ended the Cold War, that threatened the world with nuclear annihilation, has died. Oh yeah, I'm glad we no longer have that threat. Dumb as fuck. Few leaders in the 20th century, indeed in any century, have had such a profound effect on their time. In little more, you could write this about Hitler. Like, what does this even mean? His profound effect was being a complete and utter failure at what he set out to do. What would an American version of Gorbachev be like? It would be like if Lincoln lost the election to lost re-election to what's his name, McClellan, and McClellan had surrendered to the Confederacy. There's literally no American political figure that is as bad as that's the equivalent. In little more than 6 tumultuous years, Mr. Gorbachev, which didn't even happen, by the way, so I have to go to a hypothetical. He was that bad. In a little more than 6 tumultuous years, Gorbachev lifted the Iron Curtain, decisively altering the political climate of the world. At home, he promised and delivered greater openness as he set out to restructure his company society and faltering economy. It was not his intention to liquidate the Soviet Empire, but within 5 years of coming to power, he had presided over the dissolution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. He ended the Soviet debacle in Afghanistan, and an extraordinary 5 months in 1989 stood by as the communist system imploded from the Baltics to the Balkans in countries already weakened by widespread corruption and moribund economies. And guess what happened? They got far more corrupt and way more. They went from moribund to collapsing. It's like this article was published in 1991. Legitimately, nothing has been added from what happened in reality. For this, he was hounded from office by hardline communist plotters and disappointed liberals alike. The first group fearing that he would destroy the old system, the other worried that he would not. It was abroad that he was hailed as heroic. George F. Kennan, the distinguished American diplomat and Sovietologist, Mr. Gorbachev was a miracle. A man who saw the world as it was, unblinkered by Soviet ideology. He was a miracle. He defeated our enemy. They imploded ourselves. We didn't even see it coming. The CIA never thought the Soviet Union was going to collapse when it did. Because it wasn't a collapse of the economy. That's liberal cope. It wasn't in a collapse of based on material factors. It was a collapse based on political failure. The economy collapsed far harder when it was under capitalism. And guess what happened? They remained under capitalism. If collapsing your economy was what led to the collapse of your ideology, capitalism would have failed hundreds of years ago. Collapse is name of the game in capitalism. But to many inside Russia, not to many, to everybody in Russia, only 1% approval. That's it. I've never seen a person have 1% approval. I've never seen it. The upheaval of Mr. Gorbachev had wrought was a disaster. President Vladimir Putin called the collapse of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. For Mr. Putin and his fellow KGB veterans who now form the inner circle of power in Russia, the end of the USSR was a moment of shame and defeat that the invasion of Ukraine this year was meant to help undo. This is Gorbachev. Why are you talking about this? This is an attempt to discredit this view by associating it with a right wing that directly. What's so funny about this is Putin came from our people. He's no communist. The paralysis of power and will is the first step toward complete degradation and oblivion. When he announced the start of the invasion, referring to the collapse of the Soviet Union, Mr. Gorbachev made no public statement of his own about the war in Ukraine, though his foundation of February 26 called for a speedy cessation of hostilities. A friend of his, radio journalist Alexei S. Vendikov, said in a July interview that Mr. Gorbachev was upset about the war, viewing it as having undermined his life's work. He didn't care when the Russian people starved. He didn't care when millions of children were sold into sexual slavery. He didn't care when all the wealth of the Soviet Union was put into private hands and stolen. No, that was fine. That didn't undermine his life work. When he came to power, Mr. Gorbachev was a loyal son of the Communist Party, but one who had come to see things with new eyes. We cannot live this way any longer. A man of openness and vision and great vitality, he looked at the legacy of 7 decades of communist rule and saw official corruption, a labor force lacking motivation and discipline, factories that produce shoddy goods, and a distribution system that guaranteed consumers little but empty shelves, empty of just about everything but vodka. Funnily enough, all of that got worse when the Soviet Union collapsed. The Soviet Union had become a major world power weighed down by a weak economy. Second largest economy in the world, by the way. Second largest economy in the world, by the way. Where is it now? Where's Russia now? Is Russia even got a bigger economy than Germany? As East-West detente permitted light into this closed society, the growing class of technological, scientific, and cultural elites could no longer fail to measure their country against the West and find it wanting. The problems were clear, the solutions less go. Mr. Gorbachev had felt his way toward his promised restructuring of the Soviet political and economic system. He was caught between tremendous opposing forces. On the one hand, the habits ingrained by 70 years of cradle-to-grave subsistence under communism. On the other, the imperatives of moving quickly to change the old ways and to demonstrate that whatever dislocation resulted was temporary and worth the effort, which is not what happened. You know, this is what's amazing about the New York Times. The ideology is so bad they deny history to program you. Incredible. You know they tried your way, right? And it failed utterly, right? They're gonna talk about that at least a little bit? Like, come on. It was a task he was forced to hand over to others when he was removed from office, a consequence of his own ambivalence, and a failed coup against him by hardliners who he himself had elevated to his inner circle. The openness Mr. Gorbachev sought, what became to be known as glasnost, and his policy of Perestroika aimed at restructuring the very underpinnings of society, became a double-edged sword. In setting out to fill out the blank spots of Soviet history, as he put it, the frank discussion of the country's errors, he freed his impatient allies to criticize him and threatened communist bureaucracy to attack him. Here's his accomplishment. Arms agreement with the United States, withdrawing Soviet forces from Afghanistan. Wait a minute. When Biden withdrew forces from Afghanistan, was that an error now? Or was that smart? I don't know. New York Times. I thought you said it was an error. He eventually exposed the nuclear power plant disaster at Chernobyl to public scrutiny. A display of candor unheard of in the Soviet Union. He sanctioned multi-party elections in Soviet cities. He oversaw an attack on corruption in the upper reach of the Communist Party, a purge that removes hundreds of bureaucrats from their posts. Minor corruption, and it was transformed into systemic society-wide corruption. Their definition of corruption is jumping ahead of the line for a new apartment. Now corruption is you have stolen billions from the people. My God. He permitted the release of confined dissident Andrei I mean, come on. He lifted restrictions on the media, allowing previously censored books to be published and banned movies to be shown. In a stark departure from the Soviet history of official atheism, he established formal diplomatic contacts with the Vatican and helped promulgate freedom of conscience law, guaranteeing the right of the people to satisfy their spiritual needs. And what has happened since then? The rise of a hyper-conservative Russian Orthodox Church that works hand in hand with Russian neo-fascists. Great job, idiot. Great job. What if Mr. Gorbachev was lionized abroad as helping change the world? He was vilified at home as failed to live up to the promise of economic change. He became widely said that in a free vote, Mr. Gorbachev would be elected president anywhere but the Soviet Union. After 5 years of Gorbachev, store shelves remained empty and the Union disintegrated. Oh, wait, we're not going to talk about what happened? Not going to talk about what happened? Wow, they're actually using a joke. They're using a joke that people said. Wow. All right, let's see what happened. When a British lawmaker brought up the issue of persecution of religious groups in the Soviet Union, Mr. Gorbachev's good humor evaporated. You govern your society, he snapped. You leave us to govern ours. Still, the British were taken with Mr. Gorbachev and his fashionable wife, who was seen using an American Express gold card to shop at Harrods. Oh, well, I mean, there's no way that was corrupt at all, Chad. See, he was purging corruption. He was purging corruption. I like Mr. Gorbachev, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said in 1984. We can do business together. He was a spy then. He was a spy, right? Like, he was a CIA agent, right? Like, come on. I don't think they had platinum cards back then. He later encouraged President Ronald Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev to do business together as well. Well, in 7 months, Mr. Gorbachev had replaced most of the Politburo's old guard. The following year, he replaced 41% of the voting members, pushed top military officers and thousands of bureaucrats into retirement. It's almost like he was trying to destroy the Soviet Union from within. I don't want to read you the whole thing because it's really ridiculously, I mean, it's so obvious. Like, peace was not at hand everywhere. If glasnost gave free rein to public debate, the Soviet Union cast light on past errors and current problems. It also rekindled nationalist aspirations, religious rivalries, and ethnic hatred that had been smoldering in outlying Soviet republic since before Stalin, Lenin, and Marx. Yeah. Man, it was really great when the Yugoslavia collapsed into genocides. Yep. Freedom. I want to see what the legacy is. What happened? Mr. Yeltsin, his sometime ally and frequent opponent, offered his own assessment of Gorbachev in 91. He thought to unite the impossible: communism with the market, public property with private property, political pluralism with the Communist Party. These are incompatible couples, but he insisted on them, and therein lay his fundamental strategic mistake. Yeltsin! Yet somehow in communist China it worked, huh? Weird. Gorbachev would weigh in. He warned against the eastward expansion of the European Union. worried publicly about the possibility of a new Cold War and welcomed the Russian parliamentary vote to annex Crimea. At first, he praised Mr. Putin for restoring stability. Man, they don't talk about the complete collapse of what happened in Russia. They don't say what they were. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that they have a whole fucking thing and they pretend like it's 1993? They don't say, well, what happened after his policies were enacted? Incredible. I'm so glad he's dead. Fuck that piece of shit. Holy fuck. His legacy, end of communism and freedom from millions of people. From freedom from millions of people from life. Jesus Christ. All right, Gorbachev sucks fucking ass. Moving on. Moving on. I can't. Let's just say I don't like him. I hate that motherfucker more than almost any other person that is gonna stream, because they don't know what they're talking about. Right, their opinion of that of the Soviet Union comes from a clip in Terminator 2 when John Connor, they're explaining to him Judgment Day, and they go, Russian nuclear warheads. America launches the nukes, and Russia retaliates. Full retaliatory strike. Russia, aren't they our friends now? The 1995 or 4 movie Terminator 2. That's approximately where the brains of human beings are in the West when trying to interpret what happened in Russia. Jesus fucking Christ. Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap.